Look at this fucking tree. Seriously, just look at it.
Almost 500 years old, about the average age of a US senator, and this is just one. There used to be forests of these things, and in some places there still are, just barely. Our old growth forests and our ancient trees should be seen as national monuments, and chopping them down should be akin to walking up to the Lincoln Memorial and starting to chisel. Now, is this video just an elaborate way for me to tell you to touch grass? Yes, but for a reason. You, yes you, for a limited time only, have a chance to be a part of a paradigm shift. Give me the reins and I'd force every world leader to sit under a redwood tree. I'd duct tape their mouths to keep the hot air in and force them just to look, simply look, long enough to truly listen. Take in every branch, every detail. I mean, take this tree for example. This branch right here started growing 200 years before those guys in Salem with the shoe buckles on their hats started burning all of their cool neighbors. That branch over there, before the Europeans maybe even knew that this was a continent. The Algonquian people, the Agawam and the Tunxis tribes, walked by this sapling around the same time that the Renaissance was kicking into high gear over in Italy with the Ninja Turtles there.
If nothing else, today I'd like to recapture the wonder old forests hold in our collective imagination, to fill you with awe and remind you of a type of value that exists beyond our current ways of thinking. Because I can't change Congress, but maybe I've got a shot at the hearts and minds. Maybe I can give you an excuse to care, to feel connected, and do my part to bridge this stupid gap between humans and nature we've set up in the Western world. We are nature, and maybe with a little bit of wonder and a few stories of the power of old trees, we can get a little closer to remembering that.
You know that thing about how you have to love yourself so you can better love the people around you? That's this, but for big f***ing trees.
Almost 50 years ago, my dad planted a tree in front of his old high school. This is what it looks like now. In that time, he grew from a young man to a retired teacher as the tree stretched out towards the sun higher and higher. And as those roots continue to spread out, long beyond both of our times here, the fact is, their stories are now eternally linked. We all grow from the same ground, but despite that, there's a nasty idea that took hold across recent history. It's called anthropocentrism. Besides sounding like a spell to make the SAT come to life, it is the ethical belief that humans alone possess intrinsic value. A giant justification to leave consequences at the door and bend what ethics and value mean until they break. And especially since the Industrial Revolution, this idea that only humans matter in the grand scheme of existence has gone off the rails. It's poisoning the well with another similar idea of human separatism. It's that we're not only above all else on the food chain, but that we're entirely separate, unlinked. And that provides a sense of cognitive dissonance from the harm we cause as old trees fall. It's a scapegoat for a guilty conscience. And it's that dissonance that I want to make headways against today. When you're able to quote-unquote love nature, but also feel separate and above it, it's easy to brush away the mess. That's the true cost of those ideas. Even the way we talk about nature can serve to separate us. In Braiding Sweetgrass, they mention how certain indigenous languages refer to trees and lakes and so on as verbs rather than nouns. A reminder that they're living, animate beings. We're a part of an active cycle, an exchange that should mutually benefit us all, not just a one-way street of consumption. Our relationship with nature, Kimmerer points out, should be one of reciprocity. The Overstory by Richard Powers is one of my favorite novels. It's sprawling and shows us how human and non-human stories weave together under the same canopy. Both of these hit me someplace deep in my soul. And as I read on, the mental gap between myself and the natural world inched smaller. That's what I'd like to do today. Beyond the physical impact of our disconnection from nature, the natural disasters, the loss of biodiversity, what I truly feel is the loss of knowledge, the loss of a past, of our roots. The very thing that could help us, the knowledge of paths towards resiliency, hiding in ancient soil, gone as we cut our nose to spite our face.
All of the world's history since Christ was born could have occurred during the life of perhaps one of these redwoods.
I grew up without any grandparents, and I still got on just fine, but I was acutely aware of that severed past. When I got older and fell in love with photography, I couldn't help but think of that grandfather I never met, and the stories of his basement dark room and his weekends spent at a photography club, and our shared passion, decades apart. And I felt that bittersweet longing of the knowledge lost. When an old tree falls, a library of Alexandria worth of wisdom is lost to the wind. New trees will regrow, but it's suburbia in the ashes of Rome. There's so much we don't know, and I just want a chance to learn. I don't mean to shower on the melancholy, but it helps knowing what's at stake to appreciate the wonder. So now let's get to the wonder. Step into the sun. Here's some things we know about these old trees and forests. Both the oldest and largest living things on Earth are trees. The giant sequoias of the Pacific Northwest grow over 300 feet, and there are bristlecone pines that are close to 5,000 years old, like Methuselah over here. Sequoias can also be about 3,000 years old themselves. The largest single organism is the aspen forest, specifically one named Pando in Utah. It's a clonal colony that expands over 40,000 trees of the same root system. You can tell it's an aspen tree because... Sorry, I won't go there. Actually, I will.
You can tell that it's an aspen tree because of the way it is.
There's a current theory that trees talk to each other, sharing signals through their fungal networks and their roots. As the systems grow older, they share more knowledge. Think of all that's hidden in those worlds, but also how funny it is that they might quote-unquote talk. Imagine the neighbor drama, the weird personalities, maybe the one redwood that sounds like Adam Driver and another like Gilbert Godfrey. Maybe there's one oak that they leave out of the group chat because it won't stop talking about their new burl. It's a whole sitcom on a set that never moves. Some estimates are that forests in general absorb around 30% of all global carbon emissions, and some of the old growth forests at an even higher rate. In the Northwest, some sequester twice as much carbon storage as the Amazon in their soil. And the soil itself unlocks these entirely new worlds. On top of some old growth trees, they've discovered entirely new ecosystems that only exist in the upper canopies, basically whole forests growing on top of a single tree. In the canopy soil, ecologists uncovered thousands of new species of insects and different mineral compositions than what is found on the ground right beneath. Karina Mifune, a soil ecologist at the University of Washington, has a theory that these might help old trees weather harsher climates and potentially hold a key to resiliency with climate change. It's incredible what's happening right beneath our feet and above our heads. Now, with the knowledge of the worlds these trees hold, I want you to think of your favorite tree. The one you drive by every week. The one you measure the seasons against and give directions from. Maybe you overlook it and didn't even realize it was your favorite until just now. But think of all the knowledge it holds. It's been there for everyone that's ever loved and lived and worked and died in the area. They've returned to the same ground it now grows from. The water you drink is the same water that spreads through its roots and helps it reach up to the sky. You're a part of the same cycle. You share the knowledge it's gained. For me, I think of a shagbark hickory on the road my parents live on. The first time I saw a redwood on a road trip when I was 12, sleeping with the back seats folded down and my feet tucked into the trunk of a Toyota Camry, where I felt that ego-destroying smallness of being amongst giants. Or I reached back into my memories of a hike I made through an old growth forest in Nepal, where the moss felt like a blanket wrapped around these monoliths. I felt lighter as I walked, the air fresher than I ever thought possible. That connection with nature reminds us we're a part of something bigger, and it chips away at the individualism that hardens us in our ways. In second growth forests, the ones that are planted after old growth forests fall, identical trees pop up in calculated rows. Individuals competing for the same light, they are more susceptible to wildfires, wind, and disease. Compare that to old growth, with different ages working together, filling the gaps, using variety and diversity to strengthen the whole. Forests that can draw on lessons stored in the soil and avoid repeated mistakes. When we focus solely on separated selves, we're lost to the bigger picture. You can't see the forest through the trees is a saying for a reason. A reminder that our connection to nature can protect the whole, which protects the self. It's shown time and again how important our time in nature is to well-being. Here, maybe let's frame it in a more modern way. You are nature, so loving it is self-care. Does that help? Save yourself? Whatever works, the fact is you're part of this story. There's a lot to be sad about with how we currently treat our environment. There's no denial there. But at the same time, I don't think doomerism serves anyone except those that benefit from the status quo. What I hope I can do is instill some joy in seeing what our world is capable of. Because look, most of us aren't loggers, we're not senators, we're not the people who can make these decisions. But what we can work to do is change the national consciousness, which is just one piece of the larger tapestry. So let's call it strategic optimism. The goal here is reminding you that we're not separate from nature, but a part of it. And maybe we're worth fighting for, because you can't look at this and not want to know more. And as we uncover the wonder in the worlds these old-growth forests hold, the importance they possess, maybe we can change where this story is headed and start to see forests as a public good that holds in it the story of ourselves, where we've been, and where we can one day go. At the very least, find your favorite tree and do what you can to make sure someone else can sit in its shade long after you're gone. Thanks for watching. I'm Ryan Harper. This is Niche Nonsense.